So last Friday, Anne did couching with the Bernina, and she asked me to do couching on the brother. So I've done a couple of small samples here, and I've got lots of things to practice on. So I took some of the comments we had last Friday and I incorporated them into today's lesson. So we're going to talk about couching. So the machine I'm using this afternoon is the Essence VM5200. The beautiful thing about this machine, it actually has what's called a move-it foot, which is an actual dual feed foot that I actually have attached here. And in the back, it actually plugs in, so it's motorized. So for couching, this is the couching dual feed foot. And what this is, it includes this handy little thread guide that I'm going to show you in a minute how it works. The couching foot snap-on. Like all brother feet, they snap on. I'm going to show you how to do that. And then our threader. So this is just like the Bernina one. You don't want to lose it. It's a little piece of wire, and that's going to help you thread it through your couching foot. So if I bring this a little closer, you will see there's a hole right there. Right there. And that's where my yarn's going to go through. And then it goes out through the back. Okay, so let's first put our thread guide on. There's actually a little cap here. So what I'm going to do is it has a little hole down here. I'm actually just going to pop this out, just like that. And what will go in there, see this little knob? That goes right in there, and it just, like that. Now you have your thread guide on. I highly recommend the little thing that you popped out. Take a piece of embroidery tape, because you'll lose this, and I just tape it to my machine. Okay, so the next thing we need to do is to pop off our foot. I'm just going to snap this off. So easy to do. Snap it off. Now, so when Anne showed this last week, she always threads the foot before she snaps it on. So we'll do the same thing. So I have a thread stand behind me here with my cord on. There you go. So I'm going to put the thread through here, or the cord I should say, not thread. Okay. And then here. So I've come through this way, and then I go down this way. So I'll put my little, this looks like one of those dental flossers for anybody who has a bridge. Let's thread our cord. This goes through, just like that. Pull the longer side through and take your threader and put it away somewhere safe, because you will lose this in your fabric. So let's snap our foot on. So my thread setup, I have Deco Bob in the bottom, which is an 80 weight, so it's a thinner thread. And I also have Deco Bob in my top, because when you're couching, you're encasing the cord, and I don't want a heavy thread to be on top of it. This is why I love using Deco Bob or Invisifill. Deco Bob is an 80 weight, Invisifill is 100 weight. So the higher the number, the thinner the thread is. So here's some stuff I just playing around early. So you always have stabilizer on the back. And I just did a very big meander through here. And if I bring this a little closer, you can see the zigzag has encased the cord. So let's just go ahead and take it for a test drive. So I've just got my machine on a standard zigzag. Okay, and you'll notice that my cording actually goes underneath the foot here. And there's a little channel that the cording goes in. You can see there's a little hash mark here, and my cording just follows the hash mark. So we'll go to the end here, cut my thread and cut my cord. You'll notice I'm using my embroidery scissors. There's a really big loop. Super easy to do. So it's encased with that zigzag, and by using a very light gray, you really can't see it. It looks like it's floating. Okay, so that's just your standard meander. Now, if anybody's taken a class with me, you know that I don't meander and I don't stipple. So one of the ideas that somebody had last week, and I'm sorry I don't remember who it was, well, let's use a stencil or let's do some tracing. I'm a quilter, so when I think of couching, I'm going to incorporate couching into my quilting. So here's a sample of what I did this morning. I cannot draw, unlike Anne. Anne can draw a flower. So I just went out and I Googled line drawing flower. Again, line drawing flower. And what you'll end up getting is pictures. And these are usually a continuous line. Let me just grab my flower here, as poor Tyler has to hold the camera up. Here's what I printed off. Well, I can make that into a quilt pattern. So I buy Golden Needles tracing paper that we sell here. And I trace this on to the paper, and I just use a friction pen. Do not use a pencil, because the graphite can come off on your cording. You can ask me how I know that. I've had that come on for quilts before, and I'm going, I have pencil on my quilt. So I traced it on with a friction pen. I taped it to my quilt block, and then I stitched this morning. And because it's Golden Needles, I can just tear it. And this is where you want to use your tweezers. And now you would have an actual quilting with couching. So you're doing two things. You're decorating and you're quilting at the same time. This is when you just want to sit in front of the TV, Netflix, and pull out tissue paper. So I traced the flower out again onto the Golden Needles paper. I've taped it down with embroidery thread, but I forgot to trace the center of the flower. Now, I cannot draw at all. I do everything by using a line drawing, and then I trace it onto tissue paper. So let's go ahead and let's make a flower. I'm going to start off with my stem. I'm going to come up. So when I hit this leaf here, I'm going to take what I call the high road up and then come back. I find I get better results when I cross my stitching. Some people can come up here and go the bottom and then come up top and kind of nail it there. But if I cross it over, like I've done on my sample here, let's see. See how I've crossed this over? I went under first, I went on the top of the leaf, then I came back, and then I came on top. So it looks like a complete leaf without a gap in there. So let's go ahead and do this. Now you're going to be tearing out your golden thread tissue paper, so you don't have to follow your lines exactly, because once you tear it out, you're never going to know. So now I'm going to make a slight turn. I'm going to leave my needle down on the right side because I'm going left. I'm going to pivot a bit. Now it has a little dip in, so just slow down. I'll go right to that point. So I want to stop with my needle on the right side. Let's pivot. And then what I do is I put my needle up, and then sometimes I have to rearrange my foot. So now I've made almost like a U shape. I have my original coming this way and my new one coming this way. I'm just pulling the cording down because I have a camera in front of my face here, so it's a little hard to see where I'm stitching. So I'm coming back to my stem. I'm going to stop with my needle on the right. Let's go over here then. 1, 2. Okay, let's go up to here. So you're going to practice doing what I call my U-turns. A needle up, and I'm going to lift it and move it over. So I've moved it so my needle now is right on this side. So I want to line up my needle right on the left side here, because I'm on the left stitch of my zigzag. So I'm going to go right in here. Okay, so we're just going to move it back a little bit so I can actually sew. Now I'm going to do the petal. And when you're going around a curve, go a little slower, just so you can kind of make the curve gentle. But then, you know, all petals are not perfect. I always call this adding my creative touch. Okay, we're going to say our flower is done. Okay, I'm going to pretend all my petals are done, and I'm going to come back this way. So I'm going to the right, you stop on the left hand side. Let's go back down to here. So wouldn't this be fun to put on a quilt? Everybody knows I'm a quilter. So you could actually couch on butterflies, little flowers. You could do bumblebees. Just got to find a line drawing, trace it. I assume everybody has a good printer at home. I think all quilters should have a good printer at home with a magnification button on it. So I enlarge my stuff and decrease at will. So I'm going to go down. I'm coming to my leaf. So I want to go left. I'm going to stop on the right. Now we'll follow the leaf around. So I have kind of a nice point up here. So if I'm going to turn to my left, stop on the right, needle up, reposition so that I have that point in there nicely. And we are done. Okay, let's cut our cording. So, just zoom out a bit. So let's take a look at my leaf here. You see where I've gone under on my first pass, up to the point, and then come down and over top. So when I'm quilting, when I'm free motioning, I always cross my figures. So when I'm doing a feather, I always start at the bottom, come the top, cross. Even when I do pebbles, circles, I always cross myself. So let's take a look at our petals. So I crossed myself here, nice. There's a bit of a gap there, but you know, once you get the tissue paper out, it'll be just fine. Good control on this petal. This petal's kind of got a little fat part here, but you know what? All petals are not perfect. That's using a line diagram. Now, one of the comments from last week was, can we use a stencil? And I thought that was brilliant. So, some of us have way too many stencils. And I used my handy dandy chalk pencil. I just traced my stitching lines. So I'm going to use this to couch with. Now, I can approach this in a couple of ways. This is an enclosed design, so which means that there's no complete or actual starting line and end line. It's all one. So I can easily add a line here. So here's my pencil. So if I want, I can do that, right? It's always nicer if you put a swirl to it, because when you have a line that's straight, it always never looks right. And then go out here. So we can start here and end over here. So I have, this would be my top. I have batting and my backing. So let's give this a try. Doesn't that look beautiful? Look at that. Okay, so I'm going to do a border. This is one you want to use on your borders. It's too wide for sashing, right? And I thought, wouldn't this be cool? So I have traced it on to my fabric with my chalk pencil. Now, when you look at this pattern, it crosses itself. So if I start down here, so we start here, right? We go round, round, and then it goes over here, and then it crosses over again. So we're going to have to take 2 passes at this one. So it's just like when you're doing applique, you do the farthest object away. This one, this looks like a continuation line. We're going to start this one right underneath. So we're going to start this one first, and we're going to do this line all the way down and out. Then we're going to come back and do this line, and this will be over top this one. So it will encase this raw cord that we have here. Anyways, we'll get doing that. Just hope that it makes sense to everybody. Okay, so I've actually put a 1 here. So to begin with, I can have my cording long because I'm going to trim it once I finish stitching this one. Go needle down. So when you're looking for quilt designs, look for something that's has a lot of space between it, because what you don't want to be doing is cording or couching when you have really tight circles. So once I come around some of these, I may just make them a little bit looser. Just because, I mean, if I was using a thinner cording, of course I could make it tighter. So I think what I would like to do there is do a security stitch. And now I'm going to follow this line. So wouldn't that be a beautiful border design? That's using the stencils. I have one last sample to show you. And this is my favorite. Now I've done this a number of times. I machine stitch my binding down. I can no longer hand sew my binding just due to my arthritis. So I have stitched my binding on the back, and then I flip it over. This is the top of my fabric. And I flip it over. So let's put some cord, or let's couch this edge. Really make it look amazing. So I have my binding all ready to go. Let's get my cording so it goes right out. So this is a variegated cording. I'm just going to pull it down until we get the yellow color in. Okay. So my cording is going to go right where the fold of my binding is. I tell you, this is a way to make your quilts look amazing. If you have a quilt that you're thinking of putting in a show next year, hopefully we have quilt shows next year, add some couching to your binding. It will just make the judges go, wow. So I'm doing a zigzag. So nice and slow. I do have a pin there, so I'm going to be slow. Take my pins out. Have my stiletto handy. Okay, so I'm doing it right in the fold there. So this is doing two things. This is couching, encasing the cording, and it's stitching my binding down to the top side of my quilt. So again, I'm doing two things with one technique. So let's get my mitered corner here. So I'm coming to that mitered corner. I'm going to go one more stitch. So I'm going to turn left, which everybody knows what position my needle is going to be in. On the right, let's turn, needle up, and make sure I'm positioned correctly for that miter. I should get rid of my pin because we don't want to stitch on the pin. Now this is another wonderful thing about this Move It foot. Right? This is the one with the motor in it. Right? Sometimes your machine can get stuck on the thickness in your mitered corner here. The one with the little motor here, the Move It foot by Brother, it's got enough oomph. It'll just turn and it'll just stitch beautifully. So the thick corners or the thick seams won't be a hindrance. I'm just going to back stitch here. Let me cut my cording. Look at that, guys. Look at that. Thumbs up if you think that's cool. So you've couched, finished off your binding, and your quilt is all done. And it's a beautiful zigzag on the back. So, that is probably my most favorite thing to do with couching, is do my binding. Okay. I think that's all that I have today. Very cool. Lots of fun to do with a couching foot. So being a quilter, I can quilt and couch at the same time. So 2 steps with one foot, and I can finish my binding. Okay, everybody, I think that's the end of our session for today. So please be safe this weekend with the roads and the weather. And we'll all see you on Tuesday or Monday. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. Bye-bye.